Welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast with Jacob Ayers, providing actionable content to help you along your journey to financial freedom through real estate investing. As the premier asset class, real estate has helped ordinary people just like you amass fortunes. The benefits of passive income from real estate investing will allow you to live a life you want. And now your host, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and apartment deal syndicator, Jacob Ayers.
All right, today I welcome on the show, Jason Morris. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, doing great, man.
Awesome. Good to hear. So, Jason, could you give a little introduction for yourself and tell the audience a little more about yourself and how you got started in investing in real estate?
Yeah, gosh, I'm Jason Morris. I'm in my market is Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I live in Pawleys Island, just south of that. But I got started in the business. I was telling you before we got started, I have an extensive background in real estate. I grew up around the business. My dad was a contractor. My granddad was a contractor. And I graduated college from Winthrop University, and I just moved to Myrtle Beach and said, hey, I want to sell oceanfront condos. I got started. I kind of looked around. I was right out of college, and I kind of looked around, and my friends, they were getting jobs. And this was like 2003. And, a good job right out of college around that time was making around $25,000, $30,000. And, or at least in my field it was. And I had a real estate license, and I'd already went to the real estate school, and I was going, you know what? I can make that selling like 8 to 10 houses a year. So I moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I didn't know anybody, dude. I didn't know my next door neighbor when I first moved here. So a lot of agents and people talk about you got to have a sphere of influence. I'm living proof of that. You don't have to have a sphere of influence at all. But went along after I got into the real estate business, I started figuring out investors were who you kind of wanted to work with as an agent. That was kind of the agent's dream, to work with all investor clients. And the thing is, it's not really emotional. It's all about the numbers and is it a good deal or is it a bad deal? So what I started doing was, I had a great resource from my dad. But what I started doing was I started going online and just like devouring information. I still do that today when I want to learn about something or I'm really interested in something. I just go on Amazon and buy 8 to 10 books and just start reading about it. But I just started like devouring information. And probably the first larger deal that I was involved in as an agent was I picked up, there used to be a magazine. I don't know if it still exists now. There used to be a magazine called the National Real Estate Investor. It didn't talk about like investors like me and you. It talked about like the big investors, right? More institutional investors. And there was a story in it about converting apartments to condos. And I seen that story and I looked on our MLS and I looked at condo prices and I did research probably for 3 days. And I just started going through my list, calling people going, hey, look, have you ever heard of a condo conversion? I think I got a couple of opportunities. And that's the thing that a lot of agents don't really understand. They want to work with investors, but you got to learn how to go out and find deals,
Yeah, right. Was that converting condos to apartments or apartments to condos?
Apartments to condos.
Apartments to condos, okay.
Yeah, I might have said that backwards a minute ago, but it's apartments to condos. And at the time, this was around 2004-ish, 2005, you could buy apartment complexes in our market. You could end up buying them for $30,000, $40,000 a door, do $10,000, $15,000 renovation. And the conversion process was just a paperwork process. So it was really a matter of just hiring an attorney, doing a survey, and creating a horizontal property regime. So basically, it was just you're just paying for paperwork and surveys, really. It was an easy process in my market. And but you could buy them for $30,000, $40,000, put $10,000, $15,000 in them and turn around and sell them for $80,000, $90,000. So there's a really good profit margin on those things. The thing was, you had to have people with a little bit deeper pockets,
Right.
And there wasn't many deals like that with owner finance. You couldn't really get creative around that time. You had to either had to buy with cash, and a lot of the banks, even though that was like the heyday of lending, if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan. Even though it was like that, condo conversions were kind of new, and they were as non-conventional as you could get. You're going to buy an asset and like you're going to buy a pie and you're going to cut it up into, 8 pieces and sell it off a piece at a time. This was kind of the same sort of concept, except for it was individual units. So I've been around for a while. So it kind of rode the condo conversion boom there for a little while. And, 2007, 2008 come along and things just stopped, And I remember a lot of guys that I was working with that had been in the business for a long time. They had been investors and stuff. And Jacob, this is going to happen. I'm a big believer in this is going to happen again. I remember in 2008, I had about 70, 75 listings as an agent. And I went from getting so many calls in a day, I couldn't keep up to them, being lucky if I got 2 calls in the same day. And I had some guys I'd been working with that, they'd been in the business 30 years at the time. They'd been in the business longer than I'd been alive. And all of them were telling me, hey, man, this is just going to be a little speed bump, a little speed bump. It's going to move sideways for about a year. Then it's going to pick up and start going again. Well, in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, I think a lot of the rest of the country, we didn't move sideways, man. We just dropped like a rock. We actually did a U-turn. And all of a sudden, we went from having nothing on the market to having lots of inventory and lots of people that couldn't afford to pay their mortgages and stuff. And I really believe I'm looking across the country and I see this happening again in a lot of markets. And I believe it's going to be the same way. I believe that when it starts happening, starts slowing down, there's going to be people everywhere that are going to go, oh, this is a little speed bump. I believe it's going to happen again.
Yeah, so you've got definitely a unique experience and a different perspective on real estate investing from dealing with your apartment to condo conversions. So you kind of were thrown in the fire and learned a lot about real estate investing as you were going. So could you tell us a little bit about how you've got a unique perspective with investor-friendly deals as an agent?
Well, as an agent, the first thing is you got to find deals, and you got to find deals for clients. Like I got one client that I've probably done 150 transactions with. I've done some of them with him as a partner. I've done some I've done a lot of different things with him, over the years. We bought from auctions. We bought from individuals. We've bought from wholesalers. And I think that agents don't utilize wholesalers enough. Right. What I mean by that is, and I think every market has these we buy houses guys putting out signs and stuff.
Right.
Those guys, sometimes, they're going out there, they're spending money, they're putting these we buy houses signs up. They're doing a lot of things that technically, ethically, as an agent, I can't go out and do, I can't go out and put I buy houses signs. I have to identify that I'm a real estate agent on them. These guys can go out and do a lot of things that I can't really do as an agent. Real estate agents aren't. They can go out there and they can find deals. What I started doing, this has been several years ago, whenever I'd ride by one of those signs and there was a new number on it that I didn't recognize, man, I'd write it down, and I'd call them up and I'd say, hey, my name's Jason Morris. I'm a real estate agent, but I got money to buy deals with. And I got clients that buy deals, and we don't mind paying an assignment fee because here's the thing. A lot of these guys assume that as soon as an agent gets involved, that they're going to get cut out somehow. And there's a lot of investors and there's a lot of agents that don't quite understand why they should pay that wholesaler an assignment fee, But that guy, he went out there and some of them got lucky. They called a for sale by owner sign and, got a good deal. But, at the same time, some of these guys are spending a ton of money. No matter what your belief is in the wholesaling and signing contract thing, these guys put in a lot of effort to find that deal. And technically you didn't have it and your clients didn't have it to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So that was one of the things that I've really worked hard on building relationships with some of those guys. And some of them are like agents, they come and go pretty quick, but then some seem to stick around a little bit longer. A lot of agents out there want to work with investors. They're not really networking where the investors are. Here, like we have courthouse auctions, and those auctions are fantastic places to meet people with real money. You show up 20, 30 minutes early, you sit in the lobby, you introduce yourself to a few people, you exchange a few business cards, and then you hang out a few minutes late, and you kind of do the same thing. You see properties that sold and you walk up to the person and say, hey, what are you going to do with that? And a lot of agents just aren't going out there. They're not networking in that way. But a lot of new investors out there, they're not really, typically the agent that is going to those auctions, man, is usually going to be an agent that's networked and they're a little bit more connected. And, as a real estate investor, maybe they can find deals for you,
Yeah, right.
Lots of times I find that real estate investors, they go out and they take a course, and usually it's on wholesaling. And then they want to find an agent that's going to write up 100 offers a day for them.
Yeah, it just doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a little bit more, you have to be a little more, a little more refined in your approach. But right now, Jacob, you know this because you're in Houston, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So your market is on fire.
Yes, it's very hot right now.
Yeah, some of the wholesalers out there, I mean, their profit margins are so tiny that it's almost a little scary. I mean, they are going on MLS. They are getting they're getting a $90,000 property under contract for 82, or 81. They got a 10% profit margin, and then they want to assign it, and they don't have most of them don't have the money to close. That's the crazy thing. They got a marginal deal, and then they don't have money to close on it. I think what you got to do right now. This is what I would do if I were in your market. Okay, I would start getting like really creative. I'd start contacting all the we buy houses people because they're spending a lot of money and a lot of energy, and somebody's going to have a deal sooner or later. I used to work for this old guy that was my broker in charge, and he used to say even a blind hog will find an acorn every now and then. But you had to get really creative, and what I would start going after was I would start looking at eviction filings. Have you done that?
I haven't.
Yeah, not the person getting evicted, the tenant getting kicked out. You don't need him. He ain't
Right.
he ain't really going to help you a whole lot. But the guy that owns the house, what I found in my market is that a lot of these people that are landlords, they're not professional landlords.
Right.
They're landlords that this was a situation that was basically cast upon them. So they basically ended up in a situation where they had to rent it because for whatever reason they couldn't sell it 5 years ago or whatever. And these guys aren't really keeping up with the market like everybody else is, but they're having to rent it to be able to hang on to it. And lots of times they're in a similar situation. That wholesaler, their profit margins on rentals are small. They're barely breaking even lots of cases. So usually, I don't know if you've ever been through the eviction process, but usually when you get into the eviction process, you're so sick of dealing with that property, you just want to be done with it. But when you get to that point, usually where you're evicting, you're so tired of the situation, you just want to get out of it. And I found some great deals that way, dealing with tired landlords. And sometimes, every now and then, they have more than one property.
Yeah, maybe they
Um,
just went out of the game entirely. You're going to sell their whole portfolio, whatever it might be, right?
yeah, whatever it is. And some of them, sometimes they're a little more receptive to owner financing and lease options and things like that. But another avenue, man, I would start working is the tax auctions, not necessarily buying the tax deed, for example, from the auction, not necessarily bidding at the auction,
Right.
but leading up to it, the list is public information,
Right.
right? The people that are going to the tax auction. But then the interesting thing is, and I don't know how this is in Texas, so you have to research it, whatever market you're in, whoever's listening to this. But in the state of South Carolina, when you go to the auction and you get the winning bid at the tax sale and they don't come back and pay, you get a decent interest rate on your money, but they don't never come back and pay. You can redeem that winning bid for the tax deed, usually 12, I think it's on the 13th month, right? So in the 13th month, you get a tax deed. Well, a lot of these guys out there that end up with tax deeds, they didn't necessarily want the tax deed. They just wanted the return on their money. So there's some opportunities for some good deals out there. The problem is you got to quiet the title to be able to get a clean, marketable title. But, if you can buy, I've seen them in my market where the tax deed, you can usually typically buy about 50, 60 cents on the dollar. And then you go through the quieting the title process. And, it's a legal process. So you got to pay an attorney. But at the same time, or at least here, you got to pay an attorney. At the same time, you can get that property at a reasonable deal. You just got to do a little legal work to clean the title. And that takes a few months, but it's not a big deal. It's better than a major rehab.
Yeah, definitely.
Man, I'd start looking at, you ever heard of, you guys probably have this list pendants filings. You guys have there?
I'm
You guys,
not familiar with that.
okay, what it typically is when a mortgage company, sometimes they call them pre-foreclosures, but I don't want to talk about pre-foreclosures. This is going to be a little bit different conversation. Okay, when a municipality is getting ready to file suit and condemn your house, there's a pre-filing to the actual court filing, right? And in the state of South Carolina, it's called a list pendants, and I think it's called that in a lot of other states too. But you can get them; they're public record. You just call a title company, or you probably look them online with the judicial site. But there's a lot of houses out there where people, sometimes it's for stupid stuff. Sometimes the person built a deck without a permit. So the city comes in and they say, "Oh, you've got an illegal deck on the back. You got to tear it off or you got to fix it." Well, lots of times, the person had the money to build the deck, but man, they don't have the money to go through and pull permits and correct whatever's wrong or tear it off. And And sometimes the city goes a little bit further and fines them. And then next thing they know, dude, they got $2,000 or $3,000 worth of fines, you know?
Right.
And then they're being forced to do something. And those are great. I mean, some of these houses are sitting vacant. Some of the things are inherited. Sometimes it's just an older person that just can't afford to take care of it anymore. And those are great leads on getting out there and finding some deals, man. But I feel like in today's market, you got to get extra creative, you know?
Yeah, well, you've definitely given us some different ways some creative ways to find deals in tough markets, and some of those are fairly uncommon. So it just goes to show how creative you do have to get in some of these tougher markets out there.
Yeah, man. I wrote a book called 53 Strategies to Get More Listings. And I went down through a lot of this. And a lot of people don't realize that even like old for sale by owner leads, there's a service out there called RedX. And you can subscribe to them. It's like $30 a month. But when you subscribe to it, and I think they do it with investors, just call them and tell them I sent you. But with RedX, you can go through and you can get their whole database of for sale by owners. So that guy, sometimes people will put an ad on Craigslist, and they might have put that ad on there a year ago. And it isn't that they don't still want to sell their house. It's just that ad expired. Or, Craigslist. Craigslist, the great thing about Craigslist is it's free. But if you ever put a property on there, you'll know this if you don't already. 99 out of 100 calls you're going to get right now are going to ask you to rent the house, to owner finance the house, to lease option the house, to make a catch me when you can payment plan with them. And chances are the person that's calling you, pitching you this idea, dude, they don't even have the down payment or the deposit to go rent a house. You know what I mean? Let alone actually buy a house. So 99 out of 100 people you get, they're going to suck. The best thing to do is not put your phone number on there.
Right.
Weed them out through the email process, But yeah, if you get real creative, go through those old for sale owner leads, got old newspapers. There's a lot of deals out there, man. And there's a lot of ways to go out and find it. And a lot of agents don't understand that, for agents too in today's market, they need to get really creative. And if they're working with investors, they even need to get a little bit more creative,
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jason, switching gears here a little bit, I'd like to talk a little bit about how to find and work with a real estate agent or broker from a real estate investor's perspective. Could you talk about some of the do's and don'ts and what to look for and what to avoid?
I think the first thing you do is you can't call up an agent and go, "Hey, Mr. Real Estate Agent, I want to meet with you and I want to put in 100 offers a day." It's kind of hard to do that. A lot of agents don't really sometimes, man, especially if it's a new agent, they don't really understand their business, right? Let alone understand the business that you have as a real estate investor. So as a real estate investor, what I would do is I'd start going to these auctions. There's a lot of real estate investor association meetings across the country, especially if you're in a big city.
Right.
I'd go to some of those. I'd try to network there and find out who other people are using as agents, because you do want one that's experienced. You do want one that's going to be able to find, not only find the deals, they're going to be educated and they're going to help you evaluate them. And, I've got some guys that I often pull comparables and stuff like that for. And it's not that, I don't expect to get every listing from them and stuff like that. I don't mind helping them out and trying to figure out if a deal's a deal. But you want an agent that has at least a little bit of experience and has a little bit of an idea of what your end goal is. And I think the thing to do is be upfront with them. If you're looking for opportunities to sign contracts, that's great. If you're looking for opportunities if you're looking for buy and hold opportunities, be upfront with them. Tell them what your strategy is, because there's going to be some agents that are just not going to get it, and you might have to go through several agents, or you might have to, this is a bad word if you're a real estate agent, but you might have to work with multiple agents to find what you're looking for.
Right.
But here's the thing, like a lot of agents, man, I've done a lot of development and stuff. And if you're looking for like development opportunities and stuff, there's certain agents that you can go to with that have a lot of experience. If you're looking for those fix and flip type houses, not every agent has the same network. And this business, I'll tell you, man, to find deals, it's about networking. And, there's a lot of agents that literally only deal in the retail market. And that's what probably 98% of the agents out there, that's typically what they do. They're not looking for fix and flip properties, and they don't understand that, man, it costs 10% to buy and sell a house. And what I mean by that is that, let's say you've got a house that's $150,000 retail. Okay, by the time you buy the house and close on it, and then turn around and sell the house and close on it, pay a real estate commission, pay closing costs, and a few other things, it's going to roughly cost you 10% of gross just in buying and selling,
Right.
By the time you pay for title insurance and all the stuff you got to pay for when you buy, and then pay for all the stuff you got to pay for the sell. And a lot of agents are bringing you deals. It's a $140,000 house that's worth 160. So what I'd recommend you doing is networking with a lot of agents, being upfront about what your strategy is, being I always like it when guys are upfront with me about where their money's coming from. When I've worked with investors before, I guess my pet peeve was, dude, I'd have them going out here. I'd have them, I'd take a deal to them, and then they'd turn around and ask me if I'd finance part of it, or if I'd do the, if I'd finance it for them. And, you're sitting there going, dude, if I was going to finance it for you, I just bought it myself.
Right.
And a lot of investors don't quite understand this too. And I'm in this situation personally where I buy and sell a lot of mobile homes, and that's kind of my strategy right now. That's working really well in my market for me. And a lot of it's about cash flow. But just because I call you up and offer you a deal, it doesn't mean there's a problem with it. But as an agent, when you start looking for these things, sometimes you can't do them all. Sometimes it's time. For me right now, I just had a new baby, and it's a time commitment thing. So I've got one right now that I purchased from a lady. Purchased a double wide from a lady for $1,000. And here's the thing: like, I know that if I pulled it, it's going to cost me about $4,000 to move it and have it set up. And I know if I do that, I could probably get like 25,000 for it. But dude, I got 4 projects that are kind of in the middle of working right now.
Yeah.
So right now, between selling real estate, I train real estate agents, and then I go out and do the buying and selling thing. And man, it's kind of it's like I can buy this and I can move it, but I'm already scheduling like 30 days out with the guys working for me. You know what I mean? So when you get over 30 days out, then you lose somebody working for you or whatever it is, because a lot of your labor force, that's probably the hardest thing right now, is if you are finding deals at the labor force.
Yeah.
Because if they're really good, if they show up when they're supposed to and they do what they're supposed to and they're reasonably priced, they're not going to be around long, and or they're going to get too busy for you. But if I was a new agent, I would start networking with wholesalers. I would start networking with agents. I'd start going to auctions. I'd start going to the real estate association meetings. I'd look for agents that are a little bit more educated in the market. I'd try to find the guys that were the real movers and shakers in your market. And I'm not talking about the real estate agent doing 500 deals a year. I'm talking about the agent that is doing some flips themselves. Because too, and I'd use them as a resource, man. Asking them, hey, can you pull comparables? Here's the problem though. A lot of these new investors, they'll find an agent that don't mind pulling a couple of comps for them. Then they start calling them every day, or they start sending them 5 addresses at a time to pull comps for. And it gets, dude, it's a lot of work. You know what I mean?
It can get burdensome really quickly, right?
Yeah, dude, it can get burdensome kind of quickly. I mean, I feel like for me, dude, I think that a lot of real estate investors, the new ones, I think a lot of these guys should go get real estate licenses. And the reason being is, number one, the wholesale deals are really skinny and they're hard to get paid on sometimes. And 2, the knowledge that you're going to learn about the real estate process and the real estate business and the typical contracts is going to be a lot. It's going to be more than what you're going to learn at some of these weekend courses. But 2, you're going to learn. It's going to be a lot easier for you to learn the market with MLS access.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's certainly advantages to having your license. And then, like you mentioned earlier, some disadvantages, some things you can't do, but some other things you have access to. So it's definitely a pros and cons and situational based for everyone, right?
I'll tell you this, man. I've never had anybody that really got weird with me, that I was serious about making a deal with them over a piece of property when I told them I was a real estate agent. I'm really upfront with it with people. And I've heard some investors go, oh, well, I don't want to have to disclose I'm an agent. But the truth is, I've never had anybody that really got weird with me. You just have to approach them. You have to approach them with one hat on or the other, right? You can't approach them as a real estate investor and offer them $60,000 for their house. And then when they turn around going, oh, I want 80 for it, you can't immediately turn around and go, well, Mr. Seller, that's fantastic. I tell you what, why don't you list it as with me as a real estate agent? It's not going to work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
I mean, Sometimes it works out the other way where you list the property for 80 and they get a bond and you end up buying it from them for 60. I've had that happen before. But it's hard to go from real estate investor hat to agent hat as far as I want to buy your house. Oh, sorry, you want too much. Let me list it for you. So that's one of the things that is kind of tough when you're making that transition.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned earlier, Jason, is 98% of the agents out there are retail focused agents, and a lot of them don't understand the investing business. So when you find that investor that does understand your business, understands their business, is out there being a mover and shaker and doing their own deals, that's really somebody that I personally like to work with, somebody that understands both sides of the business and is doing business. So could you talk a little bit about how to work closely with those people and how to find those types of agents?
To find those types of agents, I mean, here in my market, the auctions would be number one. The guys that are going to the real estate agents, they're actually going to the auctions. Some of them are actually doing deals themselves, but some of them are actually there sitting in for clients and bidding for clients. And that's kind of the ones you want to find. A lot of the ones that are going to those real estate investor groups, those guys are they're educated on the business. They know about lease options. They understand owner financing. They usually understand wholesaling. You know what I mean? And they have a good understanding of, what the real estate investor's looking for. Now, some of them are new agents too. So sometimes you end up finding with an agent, if you're new, you end up learning yourself. But a lot of it's just going to be networking in your local market. Networking, asking for referrals, asking for people, asking for other real estate investors. What agent do you use?
Yeah, right.
That's going to be a big one, asking for those referrals, finding those agents that have been working long term with one or two investors. You know what I mean? Like, there's some agents that ended up, they work with a real estate investor for one or two deals. The real estate investor gets burned because the agent's lack of knowledge. And then, that isn't typically the guy you want to look for. But I would, evaluate each deal they bring you to from the standpoint of what your stomach is for risk. You know what I mean? Don't trust. This is bad for me to say, but don't trust them 100%. You got to do what's best for you, and got to do what's best for your plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes the formulas don't quite work depending on the market you're in. Like it used to be, a lot of agents would talk about rule of thumb was 70% of value.
Right.
And honestly, 70% of value, it doesn't mean if it's 75 that's a bad deal. It just means it's harder to find a hard money lender to lend for it. So sometimes 80% in a strong market, 80% of retail is not a bad deal, if you don't have to do any work. Sometimes with mobile homes, man, I'm cheap and I want to get a good deal and I want to pay $1,000 for a single wide that's move-in ready or whatever. But I'd be better off sometimes buying some that are a little bit more expensive that needed less work. Buying that $80,000 house that's worth 100 that you can make a quick 10 grand on sometimes is a lot better than looking for that $70,000 house that needs $10,000 worth of work.
Yeah, it ultimately comes down to your risk profile and what kind of work you're willing to put into
That's
the
right.
deal, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of formulas. But exactly, you got to figure out what your risk profile is, what your stomach is, what are you, and I hate to say this, man, you got to be careful with the numbers. I mean, every now and then you lose. You know what I mean? And that's something that sucks that people don't really understand. Is every now and then, you had a really good comp in the area that was, an anomaly, and you didn't know that they had extreme upgrades on the inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
And
you're
you
not going
end
to
up
win them all.
yeah, you at least try to break even on them all. Sometimes there's been deals I've been involved in where I wish we would have been at zero. Zero would have been a blessing. But in this market, you're going to have to get creative. I think there's a lot of land deals out there in markets right now that people aren't really going after yet. Maybe not necessarily in Houston, but there's a lot of opportunities to find big lots that you can split into two lots, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's another creative thing to think of.
yeah, down here, closer to the beach, we done a lot of that back in '06 and '07, '05, '06, leading into '07. That was a big thing. You could, there were some parameters to be able to split lots closer to the beach. And so finding a house that the land was worth a lot more than these old beach houses that were built in the '50s and '60s. So the thing was, you'd find a lot with an old house on it that you could do a survey, make sure you could split it. Then you just tear down the house, cut the lot in two, and you can almost double your money in some cases. But we're going to see a lot of that stuff again. We're going to see apartment to condo conversions coming back. Probably already coming back in your market. Converting duplexes to townhomes, converting quads to individual units, stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. All right, Jason, well, wrapping up here, you've certainly given us some creative ways to find deals in tough markets and some tips on how to find and work with real estate agents and brokers who are investor friendly. So as we're wrapping up here, do you have any parting advice that you could give to our listeners?
The hardest thing to do is just get started and overcoming that initial fear. I mean, the worst thing is you go out there and put an offer in on a place and you don't close and you lose your owner's money. That's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is, you just got to go out there and get started and just do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Getting started is, first step. So
Yeah.
nothing else can be achieved until you take that first step.
Yeah. A lot of us we're victims of analysis paralysis,
Oh, yes, absolutely. All right, Jason, well, wrapping up here, where can our audience find more about you or contact you if they have any questions?
I got a Facebook group called Real Estate Agents That Really Work. There's a lot of great agents in there and stuff that you can join. You can find me, you can find me on Facebook, Jason Morris. You go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/Jason Morris Group. And I've got a lot of great stuff there. Or you can send me an email, jasonmorrismyrtlebeach@gmail.com.
All right, Jason. Well, we certainly appreciate your time today, and we'll link all that contact information in the show notes for our audience to contact you if they have any questions.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me, Jacob.
Thank you. All right, Jason. Have a good day.
Oh, you too, man.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, providing you actionable content to build your real estate empire. Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for personal advice. The opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have a potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom, LLC exclusively.